Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Ginger here and we are looking at summer wheat fields, and it's always a good colour, so I love these golden colours. Right, let's move a bit closer and about that'll do. Yeah, that'll do. Right, I'm going to start with this. Just going to mark out the biggest sections of the painting. So obviously the horizon line is always a good place to start because it just gives you that idea of depth and distance and how much of the page is going to be the field and how much is going to be the sky. And then obviously the tracks, which is the tractor tracks through the wheat, I'm assuming. Yeah. And just because they're the darkest parts of the piece, so I need to make sure that I've kind of tracked them down. I've cropped this image to a square. This was a landscape image, so I just want to make sure this kind of works. I'm just I've adjusted the tracks just because I want a few more and I want it kind of looking like this. And then this is the light sections of the sky I'm just putting in here. They're going to be key because obviously they're your key light for the whole scene. You really want that to kind of glow and to shine and kind of come through everything that we're doing. I'm going to use a lighter colour palette than the picture, but only just because I don't want it so orangey, but I might do that later. So I'm going to block this out. This is one of my pink reds. This is really deep magenta. This is just going to form my underpainting. So I'm going to block out the darks first, and then that will give me a really nice colour tone base to work from. I love this colour. It's just gorgeous. It really is. The paper we're using today is another piece of my scraps of the Council Mere Tents Touch in a sky blue, which is kind of like a grey blue, but it's the pink that's really going to give the undertones even for the painting. So right, we're going to wash this out. Just wet my brush. This is where I get water everywhere, but thankfully you can't see that. And again, yeah, you can just about see that the water sits on the paper because of the sand, because of that friction between the water and air and the sand. So you really have to kind of slightly scrub it to get in. Still a little bit of blue on the brush from when I used it the other day, so it's adding a little bit of a purple tone to the pink, which I don't mind. I like purple, as you may know from my other videos. So yeah, and just going on, it is drying so fast, which is why I love this paper. You don't need a lot of water. I mean, if you want to go out, or you can go all out and you can really splash it about and get creative, but I don't know, just sometimes I do that, but sometimes I don't feel like it's really needed. Yeah, just a bit more there. Scrub that in a wee bit. Yeah, this stuff gets everywhere, by the way. We don't see as I've dripped it onto the floor at my feet. I'll try not to stand in that later and then track it everywhere. There is a carpet in this room. Well, there's a rug. So otherwise it's a wooden floor because pastel dust gets everywhere. I'm just going to use the remnants of my brush here to fill in the lighter areas. Just because I want to put some tone down. I don't have to, but it's just nice that it's all got that pink overtone regardless. Right, let's let that dry. This shouldn't take long, to be honest. It never does. Every time I move the camera bounces. It's not helpful, but you know, we get over it. It's a basic setup in my studio, so what you can't see is my husband that's sitting somewhere behind the pad. That's dry. Yeah, that's dry enough. Right, let's dig out colours. So you can see the colour palette that of what I've used. I put all my pastels, all the trays out next to me on the bench, and you might see that in my shorts video of a quick tour of the current studio setup, and I will have a proper studio eventually when we've moved. This is another one of my favourite pastels. You'll know from my other recent video, this is a Blue Earth pastel. The previous one was a pink purple deep tone. This one is a violet purple deep tone, because you can see a lot of that in the reference image. Love these pastels, but gosh, they're so creamy. Like, you just lose half the pastel just scraping it across the surface like this. I would probably not want to use something like this on a U-Art because you'd lose so much pastel. It literally would just ground to dust. So yeah, but yeah, it's just really getting the darks in. You can see as soon as I start getting the darks in, you can kind of see the depth and how far into the distance it kind of goes. I love working on top of these pastels, but they don't layer so well because they're soft. This is another one of the blues. This is like a ultramarine blue, so it's super intense. Now, there's still a lot of things and issues about for those understanding kind of how these sorts of things work, that sometimes intensity can mean that the tone and the saturation of the colour can kind of make it higher up in the tone. So if I went grayscale, for example, a very saturated colour will often sit in the middle of the grey band, so it would look like a medium dark grey, even though it could be like the ultramarine blue. It's not a dark blue, but it may look dark when you grayscale it because of its tone. So yeah, sometimes that can really throw things. So yeah, it's getting the kind of yellow hues. These are more, I'm not going to say they're blue yellows, but they're definitely not orange yellows, which is kind of what I think going to use for the fields. Definitely am going to use for the fields, because that's the kind of colours that you see in wheat, these beautiful golden tones that are kind of more almost really amber. Also notice that, and you can see it in the reference photo, there's this green here, so I'm just putting that along the edge. You can see it in the reference photo, it's like below the stalks of the wheat, which is golden coloured, there's like a green band, and then as it goes into shadow, it goes into this deep blue, this deep indigo kind of violet blue. So I'm just putting the green along, just along the top edges, and also just along the tracks as well, because you can just about see where it's cut in. You can kind of see it along the tracks. You do want the tracks to have a lot of different tones melded into it, because it's not, when you see shadows like this cut in this case it's kind of like cut grooves, what you're seeing is light not reflecting off things, but what it is still reflecting off, there's still a lot of tonal colours. It's like shadows are not one colour, shadows are many missing colours. So that's kind of key really there, is that a shadow is the lack of certain colours. Anyway, I digress. Right, that's the sky kind of done. Probably going to smooth this out now. Right, there we go. Just add a bit more here. This is one of the more kind of, it's a neutral colour, it's a neutral blue-green. It's one of the unisons, but yeah, it works well. And then a bit of the oranges in. I do need some orange in. I can't have the sky a completely different set of yellows to what is in the field. There has to be some link, some colour link tie between the sky and the ground below, because often than not the ground below is reflecting the light from the sky, so you tend to find some of the ground has the same tonal colours as the sky. And also sometimes, I mean, we perceive it as the other way around, but it really is the sky first and then the ground picks up the colour. But you know, it's one of those things. Just smoothing this out. This is where I might end up with lots of different coloured fingers, because now I've got blue and yellow. No, I switch between my index finger and my next one along, and switch back and forth, and that's just because my main finger was doing the blue, but I don't really want to rub too much blue into the yellow, because, you know, blue, yellow equals green. Don't want green in the sky. Although there is some green tones in the sky sometimes, but not in this painting. I've kind of expanded the yellow in this, and I've made it not as vivid because I wanted it lighter. I wanted this, in Scotland we do have spectacular sunsets like that, but for the majority of the time things tend to have a bit of a hazy atmosphere at that time of year. At this current time of year, because this is kind of what we're getting at the moment. So you either get what I'm doing with the painting, which is a more softer, hazier sky, or you get what's in the reference photo, these almost vibrant blasts of light coming through the clouds and breaking them up. So yeah, I just wanted this more hazy look to kind of match the softer look from the daisies I did the other day. So it's nice to kind of get that in. So there's another gorgeous colour. It's kind of like an orangey peachy colour. I would say it's just shy of being it's just shy of being a neutral. If it had been any more had any more kind of grey tones in it, then this would probably be quite a nice neutral orange. But it's not. It has just a tiny amount of saturation and vibrancy that makes it not a neutral. But yeah, I'm doing it in bands, and that's because if you look at the reference photo, you can see that the wheat field, and it happens all the time, it ripples with the wind, with air movement. It also ripples in bands depending on the height and low parts of the land, where you've got dips and divots, and it comes back up and then it rises and then it drops again. So when you look at the reference photo, you can kind of see that the wheat forms kind of clumps going horizontally. So I'm kind of trying to replicate that with where I'm putting the bands of orange. I think I'll probably do the same with the other colours in a bit as well, just because it helps replicate the feel of the rest of the field, which is really key, really key. It's me putting it down. It is a little muddy just because of how soft some of the pastels are that are already down, specifically the green and that blue earth. So I think, yeah, sometimes I like to water the blue earth out, and then that allows me to layer easier over the top of it. Sometimes I kind of want it to look a bit muddy, and in this case I actually want the colours to kind of meld together and get a little bit muddy, because whilst your heavier saturates and brighter colours are at the front of your vision, and then your paler colours tend to be, more washed out colours tend to be at the back to allow and represent distance. In this case with this, I kind of felt like it needed the muddiness to kind of soften it. I noticed that the front line in the reference, the front line of wheat, so where the top of the wheat is going down into the green and then the blue violet, it's so crisp, but I really wanted a bit more of a softer attitude to this one. Here's a really vibrant orange. This one's a tangerine, and I think it's a new pastel. I think it is a new pastel actually, yeah, it's one of the new pastels. And I just love them. They've just got so much vibrancy and so much pigment. I mean, I'm not saying eat it, but you know, it's kind of yummy. We like a yummy colour. Besides, with a name like Ginger and the hair to match, who doesn't like all things orange? Really, people, orange is an amazing colour. It's so underrated. Yeah, I'm back working into the bands, so in between the lighter bands, I'm just layering over the edges of those slightly with the darker orange. Just adding some fixative, aka co-op hairspray, just because of how muddy it can get with that blue earth pastel down at the bottom. Just needed to kind of give that the ability for me to be able to gently layer over it without it kind of blending too much, because that will give me some texture, and I really want to ensure that whilst I still want this soft hazy atmosphere, I do want a little bit of texture right at the front of the field of vision. So but because of the amount of pastel that's already down, I would just lose that. If I try and put any pastel over that, it would just become mush. So the fixative will give me that ability. So this is the start of one of the golden yellows, and you can see now that I'm starting to layer that on top, you can kind of see the different layers of the field. I do like fields like this. I do like doing fields with layers, layered fields. So it's a thing, really it is. Now, if anybody's wondering, this video is about 21 minutes. The piece took me 57 minutes, I think, according to the video. So while I have sped this up, I don't work at this speed. I don't think anybody really would work at this speed. You know, an hour isn't bad. And when you are getting into a medium like pastel and stuff, you want to do as much regular practice as possible. So in the case of this painting, I actually did this one and the Soft Daisies one back to back on the same day. So that was just about 2.5 hours on a Sunday afternoon, doing 2 paintings. This one's slightly bigger than the daisies because this was a bigger scrap piece of paper. So this one's about 8 inches by 8 inches, and the daisies about 6.5, 7 inches by 7 inches. So it is slightly bigger. But yeah, doing regular small bits and pieces gives you momentum and just keeps you going. So that's me just kind of added this textured layer of golden at the front. Obviously you don't want to pull that all the way down because you want this dark band at the bottom that kind of gives it ground. It's obviously silly because it is ground because it's a field, but what I mean is to ground a painting means to have a base that when you look at it, you know that is ground level in a painting. That also may sound silly, but that's kind of how I look at it, is that there is a level that I don't go below, and that when you're doing things like fields and valleys and meadows and forests, there is a ground level, and you want the eye to be drawn up from that ground level through the painting, hence the purpose of the tractor tracks going through the field. But to do that, you need a fair block of dark colour to ground yourself and to ground the bottom of the image, to make that the starting point, because that's where the eye is going to be drawn to first. Most people are like, oh, your eye's always drawn to the brightest part of the painting, when actually 9 times out of 10, if you think about where your eyes flickered to first, sorry, it's been a long week on this cycling event, you'll always note that your first thing that your brain and eyes will pick up from a painting is the darks, not the lights. You will then follow the darks to the lights, and that is what gives you flow. So sometimes it's easy in a painting like this. Yeah, it's really obvious, you can see the direction. My only problem with this, and I think I probably should have made the sky come over a bit more, the lighter parts of the sky come over a bit more, is that you look up, you follow up from the dark section at the front, you follow the tracks, but you then have to jump, your vision then has to jump sideways slightly to then go to the lightest part of the painting, whereas in theory it should kind of follow through, and it should either lead you to the lightest part or lead you directly to the lightest part. And in this case, it kind of leads you off on a slight angle away from it, and you're then forced to look to the side to then look at the brightest part of the painting. So yeah, that was my folly, and I probably should have put a little bit more thought into that before I did this, but I still kind of like it. It's a really cute little painting. The colours in it are absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, I was quite happy with how this turned out. I'm just putting the lightest colour now over the top of the fields. It's also the middle yellow from the lightest part of the sky. Not the lightest part of the sky colour, because that actually wouldn't work, but it is the middle one. And it just kind of ties the sky and the field together really nicely. So you can see there's a lot of different layering of colours in the field, and that's what you see. If you go out and you look at a field, look at the layers, look at what is the colour at the top, what is the colour bands that you see in the middle, and what is the colour bands that you see at the bottom. And you'll see that there's lots of different tonality. You know, wheat, people are like, oh, it's all one colour. No, it's not. It's hundreds and hundreds of different colours. So yeah, I mean, you can always use Photoshop. Right, sign this, otherwise I'll forget. Right, that's it. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you guys all soon. And remember to like and subscribe. Please also leave any comments. I'd love to hear from you all. If you've got any suggestions, if you want to see anything in particular, or you have any questions about what I do, what I use, any recommendations on what anything you'd like to use, like what type of pastels, what type of paper, fixatives, methods, I'm here. Just ask away. I don't mind. I really have no idea what you guys might think, but ask away and we'll see what we come up with. Anyway, ta-ta for now, and I will see you all soon.